There are actors, and then there are legends, and somewhere above even the legends stands Sir Anthony Hopkins, a man whose chilling stare as Hannibal Lecter still haunts audiences 3 decades later, a man who mastered Shakespeare, Hollywood, and the darkest depths of the human soul. Hopkins is not just an actor, he's an enigma, a genius, and a survivor of his own demons. But behind the Oscars, behind the fame, behind the genius, lies a story of loneliness, addiction, rejection, and triumph. This is not just the biography of Anthony Hopkins. This is the story of how a quiet Welsh boy became one of the greatest actors to ever live. Anthony Hopkins was born in 1937 in Margam, Port Talbot, South Wales. The son of a baker, his early life was marked not by glamour, but by isolation. Hopkins later admitted he struggled in school, feeling thick and misunderstood. Dyslexia made reading a nightmare, and teachers dismissed him as a failure. But young Anthony had something else, an imagination. He would retreat into his own world, sketching, playing piano, and mimicking people he met on the streets. Acting wasn't yet his dream. It was an escape. One fateful moment changed everything. Hopkins met fellow Port Talbot native, the legendary Richard Burton. Burton, already a Hollywood star, inspired Hopkins to pursue acting. For Hopkins, seeing someone from his own small town conquer the world was proof that it was possible. Hopkins often credited those childhood feelings of alienation as the root of his ability to embody outsiders and complex characters, turning his struggles into a lifelong strength. Determined to follow Burton's path, Hopkins enrolled at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, later joining RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, in London. He trained in the art of stage performance, studying Shakespeare with almost obsessive devotion. In 1965, Hopkins got his breakthrough moment. He joined the National Theatre under Laurence Olivier himself. Olivier, one of the greatest actors of all time, saw Hopkins' raw talent. And yet, Hopkins was restless. He admired Olivier, but didn't want to just imitate him. He wanted to break rules, to go deeper, to find truth in chaos. Soon, his ferocious energy on stage began to make him stand out. Critics called him unpredictable, sometimes brilliant, sometimes too wild. But Hopkins didn't care. He was carving his own way. Hopkins's film career began in the late 1960s. He landed a major role in The Lion in Winter, 1968, starring alongside Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn. His performance as Richard the Lionheart marked the arrival of a new powerhouse. Through the 1970s, Hopkins became a respected film and television actor. He starred in War and Peace, A Bridge Too Far, and a BBC adaptation of QB7. Each role showcased his ability to transform completely, something that would define his entire career. Yet, despite his growing fame, Hopkins was fighting a hidden battle: alcoholism. He often described himself as a functioning drunk, a man who would black out for days. Acting was his salvation, but alcohol was his prison. By the late 1970s, Hopkins' drinking had become destructive. He would show up on set unprepared, sometimes not even remembering entire days. Friends and colleagues feared his career would implode. Hopkins himself admitted, "I didn't know who I was. I was lost." In 1975, Hopkins had what he described as a spiritual awakening. He joined Alcoholics Anonymous and has remained sober ever since. That decision saved not only his career, but his life. With clarity came power. Hopkins threw himself into work, appearing in critically acclaimed TV roles like The Bunker, where he portrayed Adolf Hitler, and stage performances that proved he was more than just a talented actor. He was a force of nature. Then came 1991, the role that would change cinema forever. Dr. Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs. Hopkins had only 16 minutes of screen time, but he terrified audiences so completely that it felt like he dominated the entire film. His cold, piercing eyes, his calm, calculated voice, the chilling line, "I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti." That performance won him the Academy Award for Best Actor and cemented his place in history. Hopkins wasn't just an actor anymore, he was a phenomenon. Hannibal Lecter would go on to become one of the greatest villains in film history. What most don't know? Hopkins based his Lecter performance on a combination of real-life inspirations, a mix of HAL 9000 from 2001, A Space Odyssey, and the smooth, detached demeanor of a calculating predator. The result was terrifying genius. After Lecter, Hopkins could have coasted, but he didn't. Instead, he proved his range with roles in Howard's End, The Remains of the Day, and Shadowlands. These films showcased his vulnerability, his ability to break hearts just as easily as he could terrify. In the 1990s and 2000s, Hopkins became one of the most respected actors alive. He portrayed everyone from Picasso to Richard Nixon. His ability to disappear into characters made him one of Hollywood's most sought-after talents. And yet, despite the acclaim, Hopkins often confessed he didn't love fame. He preferred painting, composing music, and living quietly. Acting was his work, but it wasn't his entire life. For most actors, the later years are quieter, but not for Hopkins. In 2007, he appeared in Beowulf and Fracture. Then came Thor, where he introduced himself to a new generation as Odin, father of Thor and Loki. Even in blockbusters, Hopkins brought gravity and authority. But his greatest late career triumph came in 2020 with The Father. Playing an elderly man descending into dementia, Hopkins delivered one of the most devastating performances in cinema. At age 83, he won his second Academy Award, making him the oldest actor ever to win Best Actor. It wasn't just a win, it was a reminder. Hopkins was still at the very top of his game, even after more than half a century on screen. Many critics called The Father his most personal performance, a role that felt like a meditation on memory, mortality, and humanity itself. Off-screen, Hopkins is not the terrifying Hannibal Lecter. He is gentle, eccentric, often playful. He paints, he plays piano, he posts videos of himself dancing on Instagram. He speaks openly about mortality, gratitude, and the simple joy of being alive. But his life has not been without pain. Hopkins has spoken about strained family relationships, regrets as a father, and his constant search for meaning. What defines him is his honesty. He doesn't hide from his mistakes, his flaws, or his past. Anthony Hopkins is more than an actor. He's a reminder of what art can do: inspire, terrify, comfort, and transform. Even now, Hopkins describes himself as a work in progress, a man still curious, still searching, and still evolving. From the lonely streets of Wales to the glittering stages of Hollywood, from addiction and despair to Oscars and immortality. Anthony Hopkins' story is not just about acting. It's about survival, truth, and the human spirit. He is a man who taught us that silence can be scarier than screams, that vulnerability is more powerful than violence, and that age is no barrier to greatness. Sir Anthony Hopkins is not just one of the greatest actors of our time, he is one of the greatest of all time. And his story, like his performances, will never be forgotten. This has been Bio Vault. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of the icons who shaped our world.